So let's see some advanced tricks with percents calculation. So the first rule is 10% are always easy to calculate. So 10% out of a random number, for example 450. So how will we calculate it? We will convert the percents into a fraction, which become 10 over 100, but 10 over 100 is actually 1/10, yeah? And 1/10 is then need to multiply it by the 450, because to calculate percents, we take the fraction, which represents the percents, and then multiply it with the amount. So 10% is represented with 1/10, so 1/10 times 450. But a number times 10th is actually the number divided by 10. So this whole thing just become 450 divided by 10, which result in 45. So again, if we need to calculate 10% out of a number, we will just take the number and then divide it by 10, because as we have seen, 10% represents 10 out of 100, which becomes 1/10, which then multiplied by the 450, which then becomes the amount divided by 10. So if we need to calculate 10% out of 340, the result will be this number divided by 10. And if we need to divide a number by 10, if the number ends with a zero digit, we can just delete the 0 digit, remove it, and we will get the result. So 340 divided by 10 is actually 34. So 10% out of this number is 34 as well. Easy to calculate 10%. So now let's take a look at the original exercise, which is right here. We have 30% out of 20. So let's see how to do it. Alright, 30% out of 20. So, as we've seen, 10% are always easy to calculate. So we will start with 10%. It's always good to start with 10%. So 10% out of 20, as we have just learned, is just this number divided by 10. So 20 divided by 10 is 2. So 10% out of 20 is 2. But it wasn't the original exercise. The original exercise is 30% out of 20. So 30% is actually 10% plus 10% plus 10%. 10% times 3. Because we need to take 3 times the 10% to get to 30%. Because 10 times 3 equals 30. So if 10% is 2, then 30% is 2 times 3, which will result in 6. So if we need to calculate, for example, let's take another example, 40% out of 580, we will calculate the 10% out of the number, which result in 58, because we divided it by 10 and the number ends with a 0, and then multiply it by 4, by this digit. 58 times 4, let's check, 232. Alright, but what happens if the number does not end with a 0 digit? What happens if it ends with 2, with the digit 2? So, again, we need to do the same procedure. We need to calculate the 10% and then multiply it by 4. So, 10% out of 582, we need to divide this number by 10, as usual. So, 582 divided by 10. But the result will be different now. We can just delete the last digit because there is no 0 digit here. The result will not be just 58. What we need to do is to move the decimal point one place left. The decimal point right now is invisible. We can't see the decimal point, but it's actually here. It's actually 582.0, but it's invisible for now, and we need to move it one place left. So the result will be 58.2. This is how we can divide any number by 10. So we got the result of the 10%, which is 58.2, and then we just need to multiply it by 4.